people, it was like, oh, come on. And for other people, it was like, OMG, I can't believe this.
Yeah. So that must have guided your life ever since then, I would imagine. You
Well,
know.
yeah, yeah, off and on. I mean, I just wrote Elsie Spittle a little note about how I had been things and done things as a trainer that had intrigued me, that had touched me, but my heart was never opened as wide as it was that first time I heard Sid talk. And that opening has stuck with me off and on over the years. Life has happened in the last 40 years. So, but I've always been drawn back to that space that I found back then. And Perfect Misfortune is about how that space has helped with my multiple sclerosis, which I've had for 40 years. So, um,
The
yeah, it's
space
been
inside.
been a journey, hasn't it? I mean, Laura, it's been a journey. Been a
Yeah.
journey.
I never heard that story though, that you started talking about when we first logged on, that you wrote your master's thesis
Oh
about.
yeah, it's free if you ever want to read it. I
Oh,
mean, it's
yeah.
it's on Google Drive, and I just send it out to people. It's about it's filled with interviews with lots of different trainers. Some of you met Sid, some of who didn't. It's got a six space, single space transcribed interview with Roger Mills though at the end. It's just incredible about the difference. Oops, let me shut this off.
Well, can you give us a little synopsis?
Oh, a synopsis of well,
Yeah.
let me
I
think a
mean,
minute
well,
here. Well, what
well,
happened? What happened was Roger, right? Roger had met Sid, and it had changed his life, and he was beginning to change the trainings he did to be more a sharing of understanding, as opposed to very specific, orchestrated exercises. Like where you sit in front of somebody and you just look at them for 10 minutes and then you debrief that experience afterwards. We did weekend seminars like that. And then so Roger, I think John Enright invited him. Roger was invited to meet this guy on Salt Spring. So he went up there and he came back and he was just like, OMG, are we off base? Are we off base? Are we doing the wrong thing? So his interview has to do with how uh, how to understand life differently, I guess would be one way to say it. Um,
knowing what you know now, how would you interpret that sentence to understand life differently than what we were accustomed to?
hmm. I've just put a short sentence on the awakening page,
Okay.
and the sentence was, if I can remember it here, the more we have faith in the wisdom in our hearts, the easier life is, despite the inevitable speed bumps and uh, persistent, stubborn, insecure thinking. Right?
Whoa, can you say that again? That was a mouthful. Hi,
I don't.
Greg.
I
Hello.
don't. I don't know. I'm glad I. Hi, Greg.
Hey.
I'm glad I just wrote it. Okay. Here's the quote. Here's the quote, and I don't know how people are going to react to this because it's not about thought. It's not about consciousness, thought, or mind, but it's what's true for me. It's that the more that you and I have faith in the wisdom, capital W, in our hearts, the easier life is. And despite um, the speed bumps of life, and what was the last thing I said? The speed bumps of life and the stubborn, insecure thinking, right? That was the last one. So
Perfect. I just want to say hi, Teresa. It's so good to see you. Teresa in the UK, her new home. But Alan was just saying, I mean, such a perfect segue. It's so good to see you again, Teresa. We missed you the last few weeks. So anyway, here, and hi, Tiara, we just started.
Here,
So, and guess what we're talking about? And Alan, you segued to exactly the topic that I had planned for this week, number 2. Not that we have to stick to a topic, but everybody's logging in now. But wisdom, how do you recognize the wisdom? Hi, Libby.
Hi.
We just started, we're talking about, here comes Nicole.
Wow, they're coming
I'm
in.
gonna get you all to log in a little early. We were in a, yay, Nicole, good to see you. And we were just starting, Alan just came out with like the perfect, right, like his book, Perfect Misfortune. But this was not misfortune. This was the perfect segue to really what the theme for week 2 in my mind, and we don't have to even go there, but we already did, quite by accident. Wisdom inside, that's the ticket. For people to recognize, and I'm learning this more and more and more and more and more. So the learning of this never ends. There's a difference. There's such an amazing difference between our personal thinking and the wisdom that's a knowing. Can you speak to that, Alan? And we started by talking about Alan's master's thesis a few years ago, like several. And that's how we got onto the topic, which is what we're talking about today.
That's what happened. I was saying how I interviewed the trainers that had gone up and seen Sid in our organization and how it changed the way they did training.
What was your
And
organization? I don't remember that.
It was called the Good Neighbor Project out of Eugene.
Oh, cool. Eugene, Oregon. Yeah.
So old. And the way I would describe it now is that what happened with many of these trainers, especially Roger Mills, was that he was learning to trust his own wisdom. That's what he was learning to do instead of trusting structured exercises, over a weekend experience, a 3-day experience. So he was learning to trust his own wisdom in the moment when he was working with us and beginning to understand his own life, as Elsie Spittle was too. She was also learning how to trust her own wisdom in front of large groups, which she was not enjoying very much. But so
I'm going to interrupt just for 1 second, if I might, Alan, just for people who don't know these names, who we're talking about. Do you know the book of Sid's called The Enlightened Gardener? And then there's The Enlightened Gardener Revisited. Well, these people that Alan is referring to, I believe some, if not all of them, were characters in this book. Because it was a book about psychologists going to a psychological conference, and they learned more from the gardener on the property than they did in the psychological conference. And I think that really speaks to what you found when you worked with Roger, who's no longer with us. Bless his soul. Oh, Dr. Roger Mills. There's a book about his work with community projects. It's called Modelo, Modello. Teresa's shaking her head. Modelo is an unbelievable, beautiful book. It's all about how people in public housing have this idea of who they are. And Roger helped them see that that's not who we are. Who we think we are is not who we are. We are this divinity. We are wisdom if we know where to look for it. So I just wanted to say that these people really were the first psychologists who heard this man who had a spiritual experience and recognized the ramifications for their field of psychology and psychiatry and mental health. Huge ramifications.
Yeah, I think one of the things that has evolved in me over the decades is that this that's why I use the phrase having faith and wisdom in that sentence that I just I told you guys, because for me, focusing on wisdom was a little unclear about what that meant. So what is it? Is it common sense? Is it energy from the universal mind? What is this thing? And I came to the conclusion that, or have experienced more and more, that it doesn't matter what it is, because it's it's a real it's a real guiding source of knowledge that will take care of you if you let it. If you have faith and wisdom, it will take care of you. And uh, seeing little pieces of that at different times in my life has been so helpful. I told you I have MS, right? And so it's been huge help for me dealing with the symptoms of that over 40 years.
Yeah.
And yes, does it make sense to say having faith and wisdom um, is real? Does that make sense? We'd be interested in hearing what you guys say about that.
Yeah. I mean, I want other people to jump in at any time. Just unmute yourself and jump in. I mean, that's something that I had to really experience, that you can always, always trust your wisdom, but you cannot trust little mind personal thinking. We can't trust it. That brain thinking that comes from ego, it's about us. So if any of you, Alan or anybody else, want to give your explanation, how you would explain how you know when you're hearing the quiet voice of wisdom versus the loud, raucous voice of your personal thinking. Richard, Pallavi, who wants to go first?
Go ahead. I'll take second seat.
Okay, thank you. I think I'll be quick anyway, because for me, the thing with the feeling totally works for that. And it's so simple. And I love that. Like, I was just listening to a sit talk and somebody asked the question, how do I know when I'm in my mind, or when it's ego, or when it's divine mind or wisdom? And he just again said it comes with a feeling. And like, for me, this was such an eye-opener. I've done so much other spiritual things, but there was all this confusion about, the feeling means you have to do this or that or go there. And I don't know, it all was way more complicated. And now once I heard this about all the feeling is doing is showing me where I'm at in my state of mind, where I'm listening to, and it makes my life so much simpler. It's really, really lovely.
And you can have faith.
Yeah, and when I feel like
Alan was saying, yeah,
when I feel I'm getting busy in my head, or I start to feel tension, and I just feel like I look kind of back to that feeling, like I zoom out a little bit from my busy personal mind and go back to that space that's before there. And I really like that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful feeling. It's a feeling of knowing, right? Because one person's common sense is not another person's common sense. It's been my experience.
It isn't common.
Yeah. So you had your hand up before, Richard.
Yeah, just to carry on with Alan's thought. I mean, it's summed up in one word, thoughtlessness, that state of now that literally we can just enjoy basking in it, and it goes beyond faith. Well, it is faith in the true sense. It is not blind faith. The faith is that innate sense of well-being that we are just so deeply grounded in it. It can't be anything else. And like Sid often would talk about living in the now, and that state of now is that state of thoughtlessness where we do not go anywhere else other than that singular experience in the moment. That's it. There's no before, now, or after. It's just like right now. And I know, Alan, for you, for me, for everybody on planet Earth, that's where the health is. You've used the word healing in terms of your expression of what peace has given you, peace of mind has given you.
Yeah, the feeling between the two is so really different when you tune into that, when you tune into the feeling of it. Like you can feel when your mind is busy and rattled, and you can feel when your mind is at ease, and you return to this, to home base, however you want to think of it, home to your spiritual nature before the contamination of our personal thinking. So it's like having this inner compass, right? If you have a feeling that will guide you if you pay attention to it. What else have you found in this regard? Or any regard, any new insights you're having as you're listening to Sid or reading Sid? Any new thoughts that come up for you?
Yeah, my life has changed again. Every few weeks I've got something else. And I had a real crisis, not last Saturday before. And I know that wisdom says there's nothing you need to be doing. You don't need to do anything. And I had to do my tax return. And I was so scared of it. So I said, you know what? You said I don't need to do anything. Fine, I'm not doing anything. I'm just waiting for inspiration. You do the tax return. And I felt really, really bad. So on Sunday, all of a sudden, from nowhere came this idea that I'm not entertaining any negative thought anymore. And I was really bad with myself. I would say things like, oh, you should be really doing your tax return. Why can't you do this? You're such a loser. And now every time a thought wanted to start, I'm just like, I'm not listening to this. And to replace this, I became really present with what I was doing. And I had started to try to be more mindfulness, but now I'm really more doing this. So when I was going up the stairs, I have to hold on to these handlebars, and I looked at the wood and I thought, isn't that wood beautiful? And I slowed myself really down. And the whole week I had hardly any pain. I had no fatigue at all. I had to work overtime. And it was like, where did that day go? I had just had so much joy. And it was really good until I had a phone call with my dad on Friday. And then on Saturday, I was in pain all day. Sunday wasn't much better. And today I can't turn my neck further than this. So I couldn't go shopping because I can't drive, because I can't look like this side is okay, but I can't turn the other way. And I realized that people often say, oh, the pain is only in your head, and they're just concentrating on the pain, but the pain is not the problem. The pain is just what points us to the problem. And the real question is, what is hurting you? And the phone call to my dad was hurting me. So I realized now that it's really important for me to be present, to not entertain that negative voice anymore, and to really look after myself and really think about, who do I want to talk to? What do I want my time with? And it was really funny. I was in another Zoom call, and I have like a little, because I'm in bed all day, I have a little like a tea trolley next to my bed. And I had a water bottle and other bottles, and the shelf just boom dropped and everything fell on the floor. And before I would have got really upset. And this time I was just like, oh, look, the shelf broke down. You have to get an Allenki later to fix it. And then something else. I was really like angry earlier the afternoon. Something didn't work. I can't even remember. It's most of the time we don't even remember why we get angry or so. But instead of like then feeling guilty, I just thought, oh, look, you're getting upset. So I sort of within a week have become my own observer. And your question was, how do we know that is wisdom speaking to us? Well, first of all, my mind produces the same nonsense over and over again. There is nothing new. I've known this stuff all my life, putting myself down. So for me, it's when it's like a new idea I didn't even think about before. And when this idea brings really positive results. So for example, me not having any fatigue. And I don't really think about, oh, is that wisdom's voice or not? I actually have like, when I go and want to talk to wisdom, really, I have like a figure in my mind I can really talk to now. And that wasn't always like that. I had to discover this. And I did shamanic journeying before. And you go either in the underworld or the upper world. And that is for me a bit like going inside and then just talking to a really wise guy, or what. It's not really something you can describe to other people. So I never really have to ask myself, is that wisdom or not? I just know this is my own abusive mind telling me crap, or this comes from a really good place. And other people said it's the feeling. I don't know if there's a feeling, but the results are amazing.
Yeah, yeah, the results are amazing, but you don't get a feeling sense. Does anybody else? I mean, maybe an oddball.
I
So
get
you
a,
get it.
I get a feeling sense. If I have uncomfortable feelings, or I'm projecting feelings onto other people, such as blame or something like that, then that feels really uncomfortable to me. And I know that in those moments, it is my wisdom telling me, you're looking in the wrong direction, or in the way that if I feel like there's an answer outside of myself, again, it's really easy for my personal mind to feel like, I've got to do something to feel better outside of me. But, time and again, it's when I still myself, or when I soften towards another person that I feel is upsetting me, inverted commas, then I'll give an example. Today, my son came and he put some silicone at the bottom of my tiles in my kitchen. And has really sore hands. He has psoriasis because he has to wear latex gloves. And he was getting really stressed because the gloves weren't working, and then he was getting the silicone on his hands, and he was becoming really sore, and he was getting really stressed. And I know that, there would have been a time in the past when I would be thinking, God, I just wish he'd go, I'll do it myself, kind of thing. But it was like I stopped in the moment and just opened my heart, and just felt his stress, and felt his frustration. And it was just like a compassion for all that was, without wanting to judge him. But if I hadn't slowed down my thinking, maybe I would have gone in a different direction with it. So I think for me, it's when, when I'm slow enough to hear that voice, or to hear, my intuition speaking and saying, take a breath, and, but it almost flows without having to do that, if I'm aware of it enough, that don't have to do that step to slow down. It's just how it is.
Yeah, that's great. It's so great to hear real world examples. So thank you for that, Becky. Anybody else have like
I-
real, Alan?
This just occurred to me. My experience of wisdom isn't that I can even think about it or plan it or conceptualize it or do anything with it. It always happens right now. Like right now, talking. Am I saying anything that might be useful? Am I talking from my heart? When my wife comes home from a hard day at the volunteer job she has, I look at her face, and right now, my wisdom tells me right in the moment, what does she need from me? What can I do to make her life a little better right now? I mean, wisdom is a very, like Richard was saying, it's very much in the now. It's very much in the now. It's always right now. It's happening. Right now. If I'm in touch with wisdom, I won't say things that are driven by any kind of urgency or insecurity. Anyway, it's a very now thing, and having faith. Not blind faith, Richard, for sure, but having seen it manifest so many times, all the time, I have more faith in that it will guide me and take care of me if I let it. That's anyway. Those are my thoughts, and my wisdom tells me to stop talking, so I will.
When I was really depressed, I sort of had a feeling I should trust whoever is there to trust. And I was terrified because I thought, yeah, I do this, and then my life gets even worse. And now I have this trust. I'm not worried anymore where my money is coming from or jobs are coming from, and it feels really good. There's the feeling. But it is really strange to explain that to other people because it's so personal, isn't it? We can only always talk from our own experience. And I think that's why it's not like a method you can teach, because people would find that really patronizing. They probably would say, yeah, if you would have my life, then it's easy to say you trust because you are like this and whatever. So it's always a really, really personal decision. But then on the other hand, maybe that's all we have to do, just share our personal experience, and then something will resonate with people.
Whoops, I already was unmuted. Yeah, exactly, Teresa. That sharing it helps people resonate with their own insights, with what they experience, because we can only speak from our own experience. Pallavi.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I really liked what Teresa was just describing, and just from now listening to you, Teresa, it's like you're sharing from that space, and so the feeling is it's possible to feel it by you just talking about it, no matter which words you use, I guess, or if my picture look or image looks a bit different than yours or anybody else's. But I feel too it's just like being in that space with somebody else and saying whatever, I don't know, wants to be said in that moment. So and when Ellen was speaking, it kind of came to my mind that for me it feels like wisdom and love is basically the same. Like from this space, it's I'm in a space of love, and from there, yeah, I kind of act different than from a feeling of insecurity or fear or tension, and so it seems to me it's yeah, it's the same in a way.
Yeah, that was so well said, Libby.
So what I'm trying hard to do is just stay positive and surround myself around people that are positive, because just given everything in my life right now, like it's very easy to, get depressed or feel like a lot of negativity, with COVID and with, my work schedule and, things around the house and all that. So I have a group of friends that I try to, reach out to. So I think what's helpful to me is just finding those people that you can reach out to that, are really like good for your soul. So I have this little piece of paper next to me, and it says, be around people that are good for your soul. It's just like my little reminder that, if somebody's having a bad day, I'm there for them, but I'm trying not to get sucked into a lot of negativity right now, and just, be positive about the new year and, and people and what's going on in my life. So, I mean, I think that'll bring, my own self-reflection, my own positive self-reflection. So that's kind of my goal.
Yeah, that's nice, Libby. It reminds me of what Sid would say, like, look at what is, which to me is the positive, rather than what isn't, which is what we would like things to be, but they're not, and so we get into that poor me and negative feeling state when we're looking at what isn't. So that's, yeah, nice. See how everybody's catching on, Greg? You got to just unmute yourself. There you go.
I guess I sort of have like a comment on inner wisdom. So I think yesterday I was listening to one of Sid's videos, and he talked about and he said that line, like, you're one thought away from like happiness or perfect mental health, or I don't know exactly how it went, but when people earlier were talking about trusting your inner wisdom, sort of think that's like similar. Like, to me, I guess like trusting in your inner wisdom would be like knowing that like whatever you're going through or whatever's going on, you can like you can get through it, sort of, and then like all the maybe other kind of worries you're having, you would like might be unnecessary. So like I guess maybe inner wisdom could be like knowing kind of what worries that you're having are just shouldn't really be worries, or like are kind of unnecessary, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it makes perfect sense. That's a really great way to describe it. We're always one thought away from mental well-being. I mean, that's a mind-blowing phrase. What to the rest of you, what have you heard inside yourself when you hear Sid say something that audacious? Richard, you have to unmute yourself. You look like the cat who ate the mouse. How does that saying go?
Oh, you mean the, no, I have to chuckle because I mean, like, my experience has been from pretty well a get-go in all of his public sharings and even the private ones. You have absolutely no clue of what he just said. And, but the deep impact that results from that. I mean, I've come back from some space. I have no idea where I've been when I'm listening to him. Like none. Other than the fact that I was aware of this incredible state. That was it. When he said those words, don't listen to my words, he meant it. And he would also say, if you hear this word, because that resonates with you, you use that word. Because he felt that if you were hung up on the word, an argument within your intellect would start. And we have to steer away from that. We have to acknowledge the fact that that's just something that exists on a totally different plane from true essence. You know, it's in the little, it's in the form of the little mind or the intellectual mind or the ego. Again, they're just words. You know, the fact that they're trying to describe something so indescribable. I mean, his experience, as he describes it, was beyond space, time, and matter. And like when we're in the world of form, that's the only thing that exists until we go beyond that. And
You know what's interesting? I actually can say that I've had experiences where I look and say, oh my gosh, one thought ago, I was bummed out. I mean, I'll give you an example. And I'm not saying like, you know, this is going to be a show for anybody else. But on Thanksgiving, I woke up, it was really dreary here. It was the first really wintry, dreary, it was raining, everything, all the leaves were off. It was really bleak. And I woke up with the thought, oh my God, another Thanksgiving, you're all alone. So needless to say, dreary weather, all alone. I go to my park to shake this really down in the dumps feeling. And I'm in this park and it's like the twilight zone. Nobody is there because A, they're at home with their families. It's Thanksgiving. B, the weather is so awful. Who would want to be out in it anyway? And this park has wonderful places of ballparks within the park. There's a great walkway I love to take on this bridge. And then you come out to tennis courts and racquetball courts and basketball courts. And I am the only person there. I mean, and then I have the thought, this is so cool. I will never experience being in this park the only person, and it's like the end of the world and I'm the only one who's still alive. And it's like, whoa, what just hit me? I was on top of the world. I get out my phone, I'm taking videos, you know, and then I did pass a family and I'm like, hey, like one thought ago, before this is so cool, I was down in the dumps. Now I couldn't make myself say, oh, this is so cool. Buy into that. That's an affirmation. Repeat that. That would never work. It came out of the blue, out of the blue. So that's like, to me, it was just such a great example in my life of how, you know, maybe that's what Sid was referring to. Who knows? You know, none of us had Sid's experience. It's my little. So who else? What else about our divine nature that we can trust, that's there for us? It's who we really are, that space of love. One of you said that wisdom, and I think Teresa, that wisdom and love are so, you know, that feeling of
Pallavi said that.
Pallavi, yeah. Yeah, that's my experience, that feeling of endless love that we just drop into when we drop into it. But notice, you know, like the more we talk about this as a group and the more we listen to what Sid had to say or read his books, the more we start seeing it in our own day-to-day experience. You know, we're in the middle of a drive or we're in line at the grocery store and all of a sudden, you know, something pops to mind. It's like, wow, oh, okay, that's cool. Have you had that experience? I know you have, but is there one that you can bring to mind as an example? Pallavi.
I wanted to say something about the one thought away, because at some point during this year, I realized that I had all these beliefs about how far I can be away from peace. Like if there was a big complicated issue going on in my circumstances in my life, and I would get upset about that, I would have the belief that it would take me a long time to get out of it again and to make peace with it. And at some point, I consciously realized for the first time that it still only takes one new thought. No matter how upset I get, no matter how big the story is, no matter how long it has been going on in my mind or in my life. And that was really amazing to me, because that makes it so, it makes it way less scary, and it feels like my innate health or my wisdom or this space of love is way more accessible. I don't put this gap between where I am and where I want to be and make it like a long and hard journey where I have to go through all my old emotions and stories. And that's really that was a big gift to me to see that. And because you were asking for an example, I think I realized this at some family dinner, like a big family dinner with different people who don't get along too well, and which would normally really stress me out. And at some point I realized that I can really sit there and just, like Laurie said, be with what is and let everybody be. And I don't know, it's, yeah, the I think the this space being so accessible, I'm missing the right word, sorry, but that it's so close, this is what really hit me.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. Yeah, something you just said. What was that I wanted? Oh, I know what it was. That it's like a dropping into this place of home, a feeling of home. You know how, and the missing link opens up like this, that people think it takes years to find wisdom. People have this idea that they have all these things they have to work on themselves to improve themselves. And that's a fallacy. That the wisdom inside of us is perfect. It's perfect. It's our spiritual nature that is perfect. It's our human thinking that takes us away, or feels like it's taking us away, because we could change our focus and buy into all the personal thinking we're doing really easily, especially if you don't realize that there's a difference. I mean, how many people in the world know that there's a difference, that wisdom is something always accessible and you could always tap into it. And when you feel bad, that's where you want to look, what you want to look for, that feeling of, okay, I'm going to be okay. And I trust that the only thing there is to do is just stay as close to my wisdom as I can. Richard.
Just going to speak to that, Lori, and this is something that really, really helped me, and it's about thought. When I would get the impression that I was not seeing straight, all I'd have to do is think that I'm not seeing straight, and just let that settle, and it would pass. I mean, it's that honoring, if you want to call it, of the essence of who we are, is that it's only when we become preoccupied with what isn't real in life, and that's when we get distracted by the outside reality. And reality can be form, it can be formless, it can be whatever. It's just, there's a real distinguishing difference between the essence of formlessness and what that can do from the deepest point in our souls.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah.
What I don't understand is I was in really deep darkness and depression for years. So do we need then someone who tells us about 3P? Or I did grief recovery, which really helped, which has similar things, especially about forgiveness with 3P. But then I just found a book from Mary Schiller. But if people are so in their darkness, so in their depression, so in their anxiety. I don't know how they can find that I'm just one thought away from innate health, how they can find out themselves without any inspiration from outside.
Without any what, Teresa?
Without any inspiration from outside or any input, like a book or someone saying that. I think Alan wants to answer this.
Yeah, I had a thought of that. A thought about that. I've worked with a lot of really, really depressed people in the past, and schizophrenics, and just a wide variety of mental illnesses. And what I've learned is, and I recall reading this in, that might have even been in Missing Link, where really the only way to help these people is to live the truth of that freedom yourself. And because, yeah, I mean, you can't convince them that the world is differently than they believe it is. The only thing you can do is draw them to that truth, in my mind anyway. You guys might disagree, but that's been my experience. The only thing you can do is to live that truth and be with them and draw them to that. And many times they're not willing to do that, but they're always, like we were saying, one thought away.
My question was more if they don't meet anybody. I've not met anybody before. In 2017, I just came across the book Mind Yoga. It was cheap and I like yoga, and I thought, yeah, that sounds like a good book. And she doesn't even reference it. And then I did more research and I found it. But I think if I haven't found the book and I haven't heard of 3P, I wouldn't have had this awareness. So my question is, if people don't meet anybody who lives this truth, where they can witness that, in theory, they should find it themselves, because we are only one thought away, aren't we? I think Richard wants to. Yeah, I'm you.
And then I want to answer it too. I have a great personal example when after Richard. So we may have to stay on a little longer. Is that okay?
Just to speak to that, Teresa, we can find the answer. The answer is innately there inside us, period. We don't need the book, we don't need people, etc., etc. Perhaps the biggest challenge is becoming aware of whether we're asleep or not. When I talk about asleep, I'm talking in the cosmic sense that we are not aware. Like when I woke up, when I had my first aha moment, I came to the realization that I was searching, and the first thing I did is I stopped, because it's innately there. And that's really the essence of Sid's uncovery, is that he claimed, I'm not inventing this. I didn't discover this. It's been here since the dawn of time. Many other enlightened beings have been have been present in to humankind, and we're not just talking in the physical sense. So when you look back in time, like Buddha, Jesus, Allah, I would put Sid in the same category, an enlightened being that happened to grace planet Earth. We've just had the very good fortune of being alive physically at the same time. I mean, I can't say it any simpler, really, other than the fact that the essence of life exists in all of us. We just have to wake up and uncover it, so that it takes care of all those things. I've had 3 years of suffering myself, in quotes, of depression, not depression, anxiety, despite having met Sid 44 years ago. Because the little mind will fool you. It teases you into thinking something else is real. And that something else is so false from a point of view of There was some reading I was suggesting to Lori. This is the chapter in The Missing Link on the duality of life. And this is this cosmic duality that exists, that, you know, we put emphasis on what we think is real when in fact we're not really focused on what is real. So anyways, I'm just speaking from experience that it's really easy to get caught up in the intellectualizing of what truth is, what, you know, what ego is, etc. But they're all, you know, they're all based on something that's on the outside as opposed to the inside. And you know, if there's any way that you can come to that understanding of what inside means, it'll free you, you know, from a point of view of anything that you know, perceive to be real or unreal, or I'm just speaking from experience. I mean, I had the very good fortune of coming into contact with the principles, and then they weren't described as the principles. There were different, you know, slightly different words, but same essence. Even prior to meeting Sid, I had an awareness of a greater presence than just me, and we all have. I mean, it just, again, it depends on that degree of awareness. So Sid would use the word consciousness, awareness, understanding. Again, they're just words trying to describe, you know, the true nature of life.
And the beautiful thing is everybody already knows from that spiritual essence. We do know the difference between illusion and, you know, the word real, even the word reality, that's up for grabs, how people translate that word. But to me, the only real is the fact that we think. That's the only thing that's real. What we think looks like it's reality, but it's an illusion of what's going on because other people see it differently. Pallavi.
It just came to my mind about Teresa's question that to me, sometimes it feels like the possibility of hearing something is there all the time. Like life constantly gives me the possibility. When I look back, I came across so many really wise teachings, but I guess I couldn't hear them. Like I could hear little parts, but now I feel like since listening to Sid, I hear more. And now I look back to other teachings I've heard and they come to my mind and suddenly I see or I understand the deeper sense in them. So I thought just maybe it's not so much about if people come across the book, you know, maybe it's also about when we are ready to actually hear something new.
Yeah, how does that saying go? When you're ready, the teacher appears, something like that. It's really the teacher inside of you, your own insights. Alan.
Yeah, this is great. I just had another thought. Thank you. Pallavi or Pallavi, I can't stand it. Is it Pallavi or Pallavi?
I probably mess up your
No,
name.
I
My
just need to-
apologies.
I really don't care, but it's Pallavi.
Okay. Pallavi. Okay, thank you. Well, I was thinking about, so what was it about in the 70s, you know, being in that group of people when Sid came into the room and sat down? Why was that the time for me and not one previous time with, you know, studying Krishnamurti and studying Goldsmith, right? Goldsmith? Anyway, Neil Goldsmith.
Joel Goldsmith, yeah.
Yeah, Joel Goldsmith. So studying people and different religions and listening to tapes and reading books, why was it right then? And it occurred to me that, you know what? I had no expectations. I was like an open book. You know, I sat down. I was glad to be there because I was with my friends, and it was St. Mary's Lake. It's a beautiful place, and it was a retreat, for crying out loud. This is very fun. I was wide open to whatever would happen. And I think Sid's humility and the truth of it and the message snuck through. That's the way it feels to me. It feels like it snuck through. And I'm so grateful, so grateful. And I wish I could say, yeah, I worked really hard and I studied really a long time to understand this thing. No, no, it was we were dancing to Saturday Night Live music and Sid's words just snuck through. And thank you.
That's a great way to put it. That's so funny. I love that. Yeah, and something that Sid did say was on one of the tapes, that whatever your religion is, right? If you go to church, if you go to synagogue, if you go to a mosque, don't stop, go. You'll hear the message deeper. And that's what happened to me when I would, try to make heads or tails of what these writers, these mystics, Joel Goldsmith or Krishnamurti or whoever I was trying to read back then, and never finished any of their books because it just got too much. I was trying to figure it out. Must have been what it turned me off to it. And for some reason, hearing Sid and having my first wake up call to, oh my gosh, it's not all up to me. That was like before that's another example of one thought away in my life, because I had been depressed for 4 years, at least 4 years. That was the time period I worked with a Jungian analyst. I thought, oh, this is sexy, working with this Jungian analyst in San Francisco, California. Lovely woman, PhD, smart, lovely person. I went in depressed and I came out just as depressed 4 years later. But I could tell you, I'm depressed because my mother said this, my brother did that, my father, the other thing, And then I'm sitting in Sid's, the first talk of his, and I don't know the words he said, but what came through was, Lori, you are not in charge of your life here. It's not up to you who you marry, when you marry, if you have a child, when you have a child. This is not your plan. And that was the end of my depression. That was it. Man with a 9th grade education got through to me where a PhD psychologist couldn't. I love that.
Well, that's the cool thing, Lori, is like he came up with that word as to what psychology meant, the logic of the psyche. And like that's where psychology as a profession totally missed it. They just didn't, they weren't looking at the fact, they were looking at the outward trappings of the fact. And that's where Freud and whatnot. And there's, what is it, William James? He's a, enlightened being to the point that he didn't uncover it in his time, but he knew somebody would. And I mean, it speaks to Sid, at that future event that somebody would uncover it. And Sid is, again, he's not the first, because he's the first to say it's been around since the dawn of time. There's a really important reference, I think, for people that, like, not to belittle Sid's contributions, but this is a book that Sid turned us on to. It's the life and teaching. It's the life and teachings of the masters of the Far East. It's a 5-volume set. This was written in 1935.
Yeah.
It was republished in 1962.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we have the set. I mean, again, it's like what you were saying about religion. Like, don't stop going. Don't, like, Sid said, all religions have it. So what you have to do is you need to drop the belief that religion is skewed, because the essence of the religion is what's real. The dogma and everything else that goes with the trappings of religion is just the outer optics of religion.
Somebody's chatting. Oh, there. Thank you. Life and Teaching of the Masters of the Far East.
I gave up on religion at age 10. I stopped going to church. It was my own conscious decision. I told my mom, I'm not going to church today. I said, it's not doing anything for me. I realized that I had a path to follow at age 10. I saw something that was deeper than Protestant religion was going to give me. I'm deeply spiritual. I don't describe myself as religious.
It's all about the insights. The way I see it, it's all about the insights that we see within ourselves, in, not somebody else's insights, not what we're learning from somebody else, not the conditioned thinking that we collect through our lifetime, but just a much deeper, quieter place. And somebody was talking about faith, that, yeah, I mean, when, I don't know, maybe it only takes one time to access that gives us faith that, oh, wow, I really am connected to something that is so much deeper, that comes before all the personal trappings, all, what Sid would call the the contamination of personal thinking. We are that essence, that spiritual essence, before the the contamination of personal thinking. I mean, that's wild. We could probably spend an hour just having a look at one of Sid's sentences. They're so enormous. It's just so enormous what he saw. Teresa.
What I thought as well, you can so easily argue about religion, and people do that all the time, but you can't really argue about what we discovered, because again, it's really personal. And how can you argue about something that you haven't got a picture of? You can't put in a corner, or you can't argue about this. And that's why I wouldn't call myself a religious person, because I think I was born in a Christian family. If I would have been born in a Muslim family, I would be Muslim. It's a bit like race. I was born with white skin, and other people, my kids, are born mixed race. So I can't argue. How can I argue about this? And I know a few people change their religion, but most people stay in the religion they are born in, or they just say goodbye completely to it. But yeah, that's the thing. We cannot argue about this wisdom. And maybe that's one of the the truths, that you cannot argue about the truth. And what we argue about is just opinions, really.
Yeah, that rings true. So we're getting close to the hour. What other things you want to share or ask? Anything that comes to mind? I actually meant to ask you when we came on today, if there were any new thoughts about listening, because that was our first webinar. And I like to just go back to it to see, but you could always write in the comments if something came to you about how to listen in a deep way. Yeah. So next week, there's going to be a surprise. And it really fits into, we don't have to stick with our topics, but because whatever we talk about, you can relate to whatever the topic was that I chose for that week when you think about it. But, I posted a 15-minute video of Chandria, Richard, correct me if I'm pronouncing it wrong. Chandria. Is that right?
Yeah, Charania.
So he's agreed to be in a webinar with me. And I thought it would be really good to do it on Mystery School. We'll see who else shows up from the bigger Three Principles community. That'll be kind of fun. Richard's designing a flyer for it, an ad for it. That's going to be really fun too. We came up with some cool images. His story of transformation is just so mind-blowing. It's just so mind-blowing and just gives so much hope for all of us. Man, if this soul can go through what he went through and come out the other end, such a beautiful human, anything's possible for any one of us. You going to say something, Richard?
No, it's just like I have to chuckle because he's a personal friend as well, but very insightful. And like when you hear his story, like you literally, it blows your mind because you look at the transformation from lost to found.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. From lost to found. So any last comments? Questions, wishes? Anybody else you'd like me to invite on to have a conversation with? Let me know, send me an IM or however you get in touch with me. All right. Thank you all for coming today. And a week sometimes goes by really fast, but sometimes between our meetings, the week seems a lot longer. I guess that's a good point, a good thing. Like I look forward to this. Yeah. So take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, Lori.
Oh, you're welcome, Alan. Always so great to have you. Yeah.
This is a very rich experience, Lori. Very rich.
So,
thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll send you the Google Drive link to my interview with those guys, my master's thesis.
Oh yeah, that would be cool.
Just look at the only thing that's really means anything is that some of the interviews are with people that are named, for example, George. And you have to figure out who George is, but we can kind of guess who it might be. And there's that six-page interview with Roger at the end that I think you'll really enjoy.
Oh, I'd love it.
We sat at a restaurant and had coffee, and he just talked into a little tape recorder, and then I transcribed the whole thing. So,
oh wow.
Anyway, interesting. I will fire that out to you.
That's incredible to have that. Is that on the Three Principles resources page?
Oh, I don't think. Well, I don't know. I tell you what, read it, and if it's not too embarrassing, it's not Three Principles based. It's my attempt to try to understand better the kinds of changes that doing those trainings were causing in the trainers.
Yeah.
And some of them just happened to meet Sid. A lot of them didn't, but some of them did. So anyway, okay. Thank you.
Oh, I can't wait to read it. Yeah, really looking forward. That's
Talk to you later. Thank you, Lori.
Take care. Thank you, Alan.
Yeah.